My name is Rebecca Langley. I'm 43 years old. At 9:18 on a Monday morning, I was sitting in a glass conference room on the 24th floor of Mason Ridge Bank headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina, reviewing a mortgage fraud escalation, when I saw my own name printed on the borrower line. Rebecca Ann Langley. Social Security number correct. Date of birth correct. Previous address correct. Current employer listed as Mason Ridge Bank. Loan amount, $860,000. Property address, a 5-bedroom house on Briar Hollow Court in Raleigh, with white brick, black shutters, a wine room, and a kitchen my younger sister had been posting on Instagram for 6 weeks under the caption, "Finally home." My assistant Claire stood near the screen, holding a folder against her chest. Across the table sat our regional fraud investigator, 2 compliance officers, and a junior loan analyst who looked like she wanted to disappear into the carpet. The investigator cleared his throat and said, "Ms. Langley, I know this may be uncomfortable, but the application appears to have been submitted using your identity." I looked at the file, then at the signature page, then at the photo of my sister, Vanessa, standing in front of the house in a cream sweater, one hand resting on the doorframe like she had earned every square foot. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Vanessa. "Big family dinner Friday. Mom says don't be weird about the house. It's time you were happy for me." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just placed the phone face down beside the fraud report and asked, "Has the closing package been preserved?" The investigator nodded. "Yes." Wire trail. Preliminary review shows 3 transfers from accounts connected to Vanessa Langley Bennett and her husband. I opened the next page. There was my forged signature. Not close. Not even elegant. Just confident. That was what hurt most. Not that she copied my name. That she assumed no one would ever believe I had one worth protecting. What Vanessa didn't know was that I was not just any bank employee. I was the executive vice president, overseeing residential lending risk and fraud control for Mason Ridge Bank's Southeast Division. What she didn't know was that the loan she had stolen in my name had been flagged by an automated review system I had helped design. What she didn't know was that by the time she invited me to smile at her dream house dinner, the bank had already frozen the remaining disbursement account, referred the file to outside counsel, and prepared a suspicious activity report. And what she really didn't know was that Friday's dinner would not be her housewarming. It would be the night her dream house learned who it actually belonged to on paper. This is that story. Before I tell you how my sister used my identity to buy a house she could never afford, I want to ask where you are watching or listening from right now. What part of the world are you in, and what time is it there? Put it in the comments, because stories like this often find people who have been quietly carrying a betrayal no one else wanted to believe. And if you connect with stories about women who were dismissed, used, mocked, and still answered with documents instead of noise, like this video and subscribe. Some women do not raise their voices. They raise the file. I was born in Cary, North Carolina, the first daughter of Margaret and Paul Langley. My father sold commercial HVAC systems for 31 years and measured his life in contracts, warranties, and weekend golf scores. My mother taught piano from our front room, where children sat on a black bench and practiced scales while she corrected their wrists with 2 fingers and a sigh. Vanessa was born 4 years after me on a humid July afternoon. My mother liked to say she arrived, quote, already entertaining the nurses. She had blonde curls, blue eyes, and a natural talent for making adults feel chosen by her need. I had brown hair, quiet hands, and a habit of reading instruction manuals before touching anything with buttons. By the time I was 8, family roles had settled around us like assigned seats. I was responsible. Vanessa was special. If I brought home straight A's, my father said, "That's Rebecca. She's always been focused." If Vanessa remembered to turn in half her homework, my mother took her for frozen yogurt because progress should be celebrated. When I was 11, I saved $240 from babysitting and birthday money to buy a used keyboard with weighted keys. Vanessa cried because she wanted a canopy bed from a catalog. My mother said, "Rebecca, you're so good at waiting, let your sister have this one." I let her. The keyboard money became a pink canopy bed that Vanessa outgrew in 2 years. When I was 16, I worked weekends at a bakery near downtown Cary, arriving at 5:40 in the morning to box pastries and wipe counters. Vanessa borrowed my car one Saturday, hit a mailbox, and told my parents I had forgotten to set the parking brake. The mailbox belonged to our neighbor, Mr. Hensley, who had a security camera over his garage. He showed my father the video. Vanessa cried. My father said, "She made a mistake." I said, "She lied." My mother said, "Rebecca, don't be harsh. You know your sister panics when she feels cornered." That sentence became family law. Vanessa panicked. Rebecca understood. Vanessa took. Rebecca adjusted. Vanessa lied. Rebecca was harsh for noticing. I learned early that some families do not deny the truth because they cannot see it. They deny it because seeing it would require changing who receives protection. I left for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with 2 suitcases, a scholarship, and a checking account I balanced every Sunday night. I studied finance and information systems. I liked numbers because they did not flirt, sulk, rewrite history, or ask me to stop being difficult. A ledger either reconciled or it didn't. Vanessa went to East Carolina for 1 semester, came home, said college felt emotionally limiting, and started taking online courses in interior design. My parents converted the dining room into her studio because she needed creative space. My mother mailed me a photo of the room with a text that said, "Isn't your sister brave for starting over?" I was eating instant noodles in a library basement when I read it. I replied, "Looks nice." There are entire family histories hidden inside women replying, "Looks nice." After graduation, I started as a credit analyst at a community bank in Raleigh. My first salary was $48,000 a year. I wore discount heels that gave me blisters and packed turkey sandwiches because buying lunch downtown felt irresponsible. I reviewed small business loans, then residential files, then fraud exceptions. I had a gift for noticing what didn't belong. A pay stub with the wrong font. A bank statement where the running balance didn't match the deposits. A borrower whose employment history looked stable until you noticed the company address was a mailbox store. Fraud is rarely clever from every angle. It depends on people being rushed, polite, afraid, or too impressed by confidence. To ask one more question. I was not impressed by confidence. By 34, I was managing a fraud risk team. By 38, I had moved to Mason Ridge Bank, a regional institution with strong mortgage volume and old systems that needed modern rules. By 41, I became executive vice president for residential lending risk across the Southeast. My office overlooked Tryon Street. My name was on committee memos. Regulators took my calls. Loan officers who once called fraud review paranoid began calling it Rebecca's net after my team caught a 42-file income falsification ring in 3 counties. My family knew almost none of this. Not because I hid it exactly, because they never asked questions long enough to hear answers. At Thanksgiving 2 years before everything happened, my father introduced Vanessa's husband, Tyler Bennett, as an entrepreneur in property development. Tyler owned 3 short-term rental units with 2 partners and a credit card balance large enough to need its own zip code. Then my father gestured toward me and said, "Rebecca does something complicated at the bank." Vanessa smiled across the table. She approves people for mortgages or denies them, depending on her mood. A few relatives laughed. I counted. 1, 2. I said, "I oversee fraud risk." Vanessa widened her eyes theatrically. "Oh, sorry, she catches villains." My mother said, "Girls, it's Thanksgiving." Girls, I was 41. Vanessa was 37. But in my mother's house, adulthood disappeared whenever accountability entered the room. Vanessa married Tyler in the spring of 2016 at a vineyard outside Asheville. He was handsome in a smooth, sunburned way, with sandy hair, white teeth, and the confidence of a man who had never been required to repay everyone on time. He called my parents Mom and Dad before the rehearsal dinner. My mother loved that. My father said he had drive. Tyler's drive mostly involved borrowing money from optimistic people. Over the years, Vanessa and Tyler became experts at looking prosperous in photographs. They leased cars, they staged brunches, they posted renovation mood boards. They spent weekends walking through model homes and talking about manifesting abundance. Vanessa described every purchase as an investment, including a $4,000 chandelier for a rental property that still had plumbing issues. My parents believed in her vision because Vanessa knew how to make wanting sound like destiny. I believed in bank statements. That made me unpopular. The first serious warning came in April of 2023. My mother called me at 7:22 on a Sunday evening and asked whether I could lend Vanessa and Tyler $25,000 for a timing issue. I was folding laundry. What kind of timing issue? My mother sighed. Rebecca, do you always need everything to sound like an audit? If someone wants $25,000, yes. She lowered her voice. They're trying to secure an opportunity. What opportunity? A property. Then they need financing, not a personal loan from me. You work at a bank. Which is exactly why I know that. My mother paused, then said, Vanessa says you're jealous because she's willing to take risks. I placed a towel on the bed and smoothed one corner. Then she can risk her own money. My mother called me cold. Vanessa texted me 15 minutes later. Must be nice to sit in your boring bank job, judging people who actually build lives. I did not respond. 2 months later, I learned from my cousin Emily that Vanessa and Tyler had lost out on a house in Raleigh because financing fell through. Emily told me at a baby shower while balancing a paper plate of chicken salad on her knees. She was devastated, Emily said. She said the lender didn't understand their income structure. I almost smiled. Income structure was one of Tyler's phrases. It usually meant not enough steady income. The house was on Briar Hollow Court. 5 bedrooms. White brick. Black shutters. Large kitchen. Wine room. Vanessa had wanted it the way some people want revenge. She posted about it anyway. Not the address, but enough. A photo of the foyer from the listing. A caption. Some houses wait for the right woman. By August, she stopped posting about the house. By September, she started posting paint samples. By October, she posted a kitchen island with marble counters and wrote, "Dreams are delayed, not denied." I remember looking at that post at 9:06 on a Thursday night and feeling a small professional discomfort I did not yet understand. Something about the timeline did not reconcile. In banking, discomfort is data before it becomes evidence. I should have looked sooner. But family has a way of making even trained women question their instincts. You tell yourself you are being harsh, suspicious, difficult. The old names rise up with new clothes. So I waited. The fraud report came on November 13th. Mason Ridge's automated identity integrity review flagged a residential mortgage file for potential synthetic or misused identity indicators. The file had passed initial underwriting because the credit profile was strong, the income appeared sufficient, and the down payment had been documented through accounts that looked seasoned at first glance. But a post-closing audit flagged mismatched device IDs, unusual document metadata, and a driver's license image that had been copied from a prior legitimate bank file. Mine. The report landed first, with a junior analyst named Priya Shah. She noticed the borrower's employer, Mason Ridge Bank. Then she noticed the borrower's title, Executive Vice President. Then she walked the file to her manager instead of emailing it. That decision saved her career and protected the evidence. By 9:18, I was in the conference room. The first thing I did was ask to be recused from decision-making. I am the identity victim and a bank executive, I said. Outside counsel needs to lead. Fraud operations should report through Martin and Celeste. I will cooperate as a complainant, not direct the investigation. Our general counsel, Martin Hayes, nodded, agreed. Celeste Monroe, our chief compliance officer, looked at me with careful concern. Rebecca, do you need a minute? I looked at the forged signature again. No, I need the chain of custody preserved. That may sound cold. It wasn't. It was survival in a language I trusted. The second thing I did was call my personal attorney. Her name was Lydia Prescott. She was 58, wore steel gray suits, and had once told a mediator, "My client is not being emotional, she is reacting to arithmetic." I had hired her years earlier for estate planning and kept her number because sensible women keep good lawyers like umbrellas. Lydia answered at 10:04. "Rebecca, I need representation for identity theft, mortgage fraud, and likely family litigation." A pause. Then she said, "That is the least pleasant sentence I've heard before lunch in months." "It's my sister." Another pause. "I'll clear the afternoon." By noon, Mason Ridge had placed a legal hold on the file. By 1:15, outside counsel had initiated formal review. By 2:30, the bank had frozen the remaining escrow and disbursement-related accounts connected to the transaction. By 3:10, a suspicious activity report process had begun. By 4:45, Lydia had a copy of the public deed and loan records obtained through lawful channels. The house on Briar Hollow Court had closed on September 29th. The borrower of record was me. The occupant listed was me. The emergency contact was Vanessa Bennett. The mailing address for the first mortgage statement had been changed 2 days after closing to a post office box Tyler controlled. I sat in Lydia's office at 5:30, staring at the deed of trust. My name sat there in black ink, used, moved, made into a key for someone else's door. Lydia watched me for a moment. Then she said, "You're allowed to be furious." "I know." "You don't look furious." "I'm busy." She nodded. "Good. Busy first, furious later." We built the plan in silence. First, identity theft affidavits. Second, credit freezes. Third, police report. Fourth, internal bank cooperation through counsel to avoid conflicts. Fifth, notice to the title company. Sixth, preservation letters to Vanessa, Tyler, the mortgage broker, the real estate agent, the closing attorney, and any party who touched the transaction. Seventh, no direct confrontation until evidence was secured. That last part was the hardest. Because Vanessa kept texting. On Monday night at 8:12, she sent a photo of the house's dining room with boxes stacked near the wall. "Thinking of hosting Friday. Mom says you'll come, if I ask nicely." At 8:13, another text. "Please don't make comments about money. Tyler is sensitive." At 8:16. "This is a big moment for me. Try not to ruin it with bank energy." Bank energy. I stared at the words. Then I wrote back, "What time Friday?" She responded immediately, 7. "Wear something cheerful for once." I placed the phone beside me and sat very still. That was the moment I stopped being the sister who corrected lies privately and became the woman who let legal process enter through the front door. I built it in silence. The week moved like a courtroom clock, slow until it wasn't. On Tuesday, Lydia's investigator confirmed that the loan application had been submitted through an online portal using an email address that looked like mine at a glance but contained an extra middle initial. The phone number was a prepaid line activated in Raleigh. The IP address matched a co-working space Tyler used for his property business. On Wednesday, the closing attorney produced copies of identification used at signing. The signature had been notarized remotely through a platform that relied on uploaded ID images and knowledge-based authentication questions. The ID image was mine, taken from an old file because I had refinanced my townhouse through Mason Ridge 3 years earlier. Someone with access to family details had answered the security questions. Previous street, car loan lender, mother's maiden name. Vanessa knew all of them. On Wednesday evening, my mother called. "I hear you're coming Friday." "Yes." She sounded relieved. "Good. Vanessa has been so worried you'd be negative." I was standing in my kitchen, looking at a police report draft Lydia had sent. Negative about what? The house. Why would I be negative about her house? My mother sighed. "You know how you get when Vanessa's life looks exciting. There are moments when the past becomes so repetitive it almost becomes boring." I said, "Mom, did you help Vanessa with any paperwork?" "What kind of paperwork?" "For the house." A pause. Small. "But there. I wrote a letter." "What letter?" She said the lender needed confirmation of family support. Nothing serious. My hand tightened around the phone. "What did the letter say?" "I don't remember exactly." "Did it mention me?" Another pause. "Rebecca, I don't like your tone." My tone was calm. That was usually what she disliked. I said, "Did it mention me?" She said it was just to confirm that the family knew about the move and that you were supportive. I signed what she drafted. I closed my eyes. My mother had signed something without reading it because Vanessa asked sweetly enough. I said, "Send me a copy." "I don't have one." "Ask Vanessa." "No, I will not participate in whatever this is." I opened my eyes. "You already did." She hung up. The letter arrived through the title company on Thursday morning. It was worse than I expected. To whom it may concern. As the mother of Rebecca Langley, I confirm that Rebecca has discussed her purchase of the Briar Hollow Court property with our family and intends to use the residence as a shared family retreat while supporting her sister Vanessa Bennett's temporary occupancy during renovation planning. My mother's signature sat at the bottom. Margaret Langley. No notary, no legal power. But enough to sue the question that should have been asked harder. My father had signed as witness. When Lydia saw it, she removed her glasses and said, "Your family appears committed to making this prosecutable." I said, "My mother didn't know." "Maybe not, but she signed a false statement." "She didn't read it." Lydia looked at me. "That is not the defense you think it is." I looked away. Protecting my mother was a reflex, like catching a falling glass. But some glasses cut you because they were already broken. By Thursday afternoon, Mason Ridge's outside counsel confirmed that the loan would be treated as fraudulently obtained pending investigation. The bank would pursue remedies against responsible parties, preserve my rights as identity theft victim, and cooperate with law enforcement. No payment obligation would be attributed to me if the fraud finding held, which it clearly would. The house itself was complicated. Legally, the title and deed of trust had been recorded under my stolen identity. The transaction could be unwound, rescinded, litigated, or forced into a sale depending on court findings. Vanessa and Tyler had moved furniture into a house purchased through my stolen name. They had hung curtains on fraud. That image stayed with me. Curtains on fraud. On Friday morning, I went to work as usual. At 8:30, I attended a risk committee meeting where we discussed regional delinquency trends. At 10, I reviewed a policy update on remote notary fraud controls. At 11:45, Claire placed a cup of tea on my desk without speaking. She had worked for me for 5 years. She knew silence as well as I did. At noon, she said, "Are you going tonight?" "Yes." "Do you want someone with you?" "My attorney will be nearby." That is not what I asked. I looked up. Claire's expression was steady. I said, "My cousin Emily will be there. She has a good heart and no poker face." Claire nodded. "Then wear something with pockets." I almost smiled. At 6:10, I dressed in a charcoal wool dress, black coat, and low heels. I wore small gold hoops and my father's old watch, the one he had given me when I was promoted to vice president, back when he still thought my job was approving mortgages based on mood. I placed copies of 4 documents in my bag: the fraud report cover sheet, the deed of trust, the identity theft affidavit, and the preservation notice Lydia intended to serve through proper channels after dinner if necessary. I did not bring the entire file. The truth was heavy enough. Briar Hollow Court was a quiet street lined with new houses pretending to be old. Vanessa's house sat near the cul-de-sac, all white brick and gas lanterns, with 2 magnolia trees planted too recently to shade anything. 3 cars filled the driveway. Warm light glowed through the windows. A wreath hung on the black front door. Vanessa opened it before I knocked. She wore a pale blue dress, cashmere socks, and the glow of a woman who believed a house could prove all her critics wrong. "Rebecca," she said, hugging me with one arm. "You came." I said I would. She stepped back and looked at my dress. "Very bank funeral, but okay." She laughed. I counted. 1. Inside, the house smelled like fresh paint, expensive candles, and catered appetizers. My parents stood near the fireplace. Tyler was opening wine in the kitchen. My cousin Emily sat on a bar stool, looking uncomfortable and grateful when she saw me. The dining table was set for 8. My parents, Vanessa and Tyler, Tyler's business partner, Grant Ellis, Emily, me, and an empty chair Vanessa said was for a surprise guest, which immediately told me she wanted drama. The surprise guest arrived at 7:19. It was a local lifestyle photographer named Margot Lane, who had photographed Vanessa's Christmas cards twice and apparently planned to feature the house in a digital home tour. Vanessa clapped her hands. Margot wants to do a little story on the renovation journey. Isn't that fun? I looked at the bare walls. What renovation? Vanessa's smile tightened. The emotional renovation, Rebecca. The becoming. Tyler chuckled. I counted. 1. Dinner was served at 7:45. Catered salmon, roasted potatoes, asparagus, salad with sugared pecans, and a chocolate tart that still had the bakery label on the bottom of the box when I passed through the kitchen. Vanessa talked for 40 minutes. About the vision, the light, the neighborhood, the school district, although she and Tyler had no children yet, the abundance mindset that had brought them there. At 8:22, Margot asked, so how did you finally know this was the one? Vanessa looked at me. Not Tyler, me. Then she said, honestly, after years of being underestimated, I realized I didn't need permission from people who live small lives. My mother looked down at her plate. Tyler lifted his wine glass. Vanessa continued, some people think stability is everything. I think courage is everything. I cut one asparagus spear in half. My father said, your sister has always been courageous. I looked at him. Which sister? The table went quiet. Vanessa laughed lightly. Oh, Rebecca. Don't start. I asked a question. My mother whispered, girls. Emily closed her eyes. Vanessa set down her fork. You know, this is exactly why I almost didn't invite you. You can't just be happy for me. I folded my napkin in my lap. I'm trying to understand what I'm supposed to be happy about. The house, Vanessa snapped. Tyler said, babe, it's fine. But Vanessa had an audience. And Vanessa had never been able to resist an audience. She stood and picked up her wine glass. Actually, I want to say something. My father smiled proudly. My mother looked nervous. Margot lifted her camera slightly. Vanessa turned toward me. Rebecca, I know you've doubted me for years. You've made comments about money, about Tyler, about our choices. You've acted like your bank title makes you smarter than everyone. I took a sip of water. Vanessa continued, but tonight, I want you to see what faith looks like. This house is proof that you don't have to live your whole life afraid. You don't have to hide behind spreadsheets. You don't have to make other people feel small just because you never had the courage to dream big. Tyler murmured, beautiful. I counted. 1. Vanessa smiled. And honestly, if this makes you uncomfortable, maybe that's something you should work on. The room waited for me to shrink. That is the strange thing about family humiliation. Everyone knows the script before it begins. The favored one speaks. The responsible one absorbs. The parents sigh. Someone changes the subject. Dessert appears like a settlement offer. But I was done signing settlements with silence. I placed my glass down. Are you finished? Vanessa blinked. Yes. I opened my bag and removed one sheet of paper. Not the whole file, just the deed of trust. I unfolded it and placed it on the table between the candles. Then maybe you can explain why my name is on the mortgage. No one moved. Vanessa's face changed first in the smallest possible way, a tiny tightening near the left eye. Tyler's hand froze around his glass. My father leaned forward. What is that? I said, the recorded deed of trust for this property. My mother said, Rebecca, what are you doing? I looked at Vanessa. Ask her. Vanessa laughed once. I counted. 1. That is not funny, she said. No, I said. It isn't. Tyler reached for the paper. I placed my hand over it. Don't. His eyes lifted to mine. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. Vanessa said, this is some bank mistake. I nodded. That was one theory. Before the identity theft affidavit, the forged signature, the altered email address, the IP match, the remote notary record, the prepaid phone, and the post office box controlled by Tyler. Margot slowly lowered her camera. Emily whispered, oh my God. My mother stood. Rebecca, stop. This is Vanessa's night. I turned to her. No. It is my identity. That sentence landed harder than I expected. My father said, Vanessa? She shook her head. She's twisting something. She always does this. She finds some technicality, and turns it into an attack. I removed the second page, the fraud report cover sheet. I placed it beside the deed. Mason Ridge Bank flagged the loan on Monday morning. Tyler's business partner, Grant, pushed back from the table. Wait, Mason Ridge? I looked at him. Yes. He turned to Tyler. You told me the lender was Coastal first. Tyler swallowed. It started there. I said, the broker moved it to Mason Ridge after Coastal First declined. Vanessa pointed at me. You had no right to dig into our loan. I looked at her calmly. Vanessa, the loan is in my name. She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at our mother. Mom. My mother came around the table and placed a hand on Vanessa's arm like she was the one bleeding. That old reflex rose in me again. Protect Vanessa, manage Rebecca. My mother said, there has to be an explanation. There is, I said, fraud. My father stood slowly. Don't use that word. I looked at him. It is the word on the report. Vanessa's voice sharpened. You don't understand. We were going to fix it. The room went completely still. There are sentences that confess before the speaker realizes the door opened. Tyler said, Vanessa. She looked at him, panicked, then at me. I mean, the paperwork. Tyler said it was temporary. My mother's hand dropped from her arm. I said, temporary identity theft? Vanessa's eyes filled, not with remorse, with strategy, searching for a costume. You don't know what it was like, she said. We lost that house once. Tyler had investors waiting. We needed to close. The broker said if there was a stronger borrower profile attached, we could restructure later. Tyler said, stop talking. I looked at him. No, let her continue. Vanessa's voice broke. You have everything, the big job, the perfect credit, the respect. You weren't using it. For a moment, no one breathed. There it was. The family philosophy made criminal. You weren't using it. My credit, my name, my work, my discipline, my life. All of it, in Vanessa's mind, was a resource sitting unfairly unused because it was not serving her dream. I said softly, you stole my identity because you thought I wasn't using it. She wiped one tear. I was going to tell you. When? After we refinanced. With what income? Tyler slammed his hand on the table. Enough. The silverware jumped. I did not. He pointed at me. You think because you work at the bank you can ruin us? I looked at his finger. I didn't apply for a mortgage in my sister-in-law's name. He stood. Grant, his business partner, said, Tyler, sit down. Tyler ignored him. You have no idea how this works. I almost smiled. I oversee residential lending fraud risk for the bank that owns your loan. That sentence changed the room more than the documents did. Vanessa stared at me. My father whispered, What? I looked at him. That complicated thing I do at the bank. Emily covered her mouth. Margot stepped backward toward the foyer. Tyler's face went pale. Not immediately. First, calculation, then recognition, then fear. He said, You're lying. I said, No. Vanessa shook her head quickly. No, you approve mortgages, Mom said. My mother turned red. I said, Mom never asked. Silence. My father sat down slowly. I continued. I recused myself from all bank decisions the moment I saw my name. Outside counsel is handling the file. Law enforcement will receive documentation. The title company, broker, notary platform, and closing attorney have preservation notices. Mason Ridge has frozen remaining related funds. My personal attorney is already involved. Vanessa whispered, You called the police? I filed an identity theft report. Against your own sister? I looked at her. You took out an $860,000 loan in my name. She flinched at the full amount spoken aloud. My mother began crying then. Not loudly, just enough to make everyone aware of her pain. She said, Rebecca, please, we can fix this privately. I turned to her. You signed a false support letter. Her tears stopped. What? I placed the third page on the table. My mother's letter, my father's witness signature. They stared at it. My father said, Vanessa told us you knew. I looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked away. My mother whispered, You said Rebecca was helping. Vanessa snapped, because she should have helped. That was when my father finally saw it. Not all of it, maybe not even enough. But the first real crack appeared in his face. He looked at me and said, Rebecca. I shook my head once. Not yet. I was not ready to comfort him for discovering the truth late. Tyler grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. Grant stood. "Where are you going?" Tyler said, "I need air." I said, "You need counsel." He glared at me, then left through the back door. The kitchen door slammed at 8:56. Vanessa sank into her chair. The dream house suddenly looked staged for another family. The candles flickered. The salmon cooled. The photographer stood in the foyer, gripping her camera like evidence. My mother sat down beside Vanessa but did not touch her this time. That mattered. Small things matter in rooms where patterns are old. Emily looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." I nodded. Margot cleared her throat. "I'm going to leave. And delete the photos unless instructed otherwise." I said, "You may want to preserve them. Lydia Prescott may contact you." She nodded quickly. "Of course." Vanessa looked up. "You're enjoying this." There it was. When facts fail, accuse the wounded person of pleasure. I said no. "You always wanted me to fail." "No, Vanessa, I wanted you to stop succeeding with other people's sacrifices." She stared at me. For once, she had no performance ready. My father said quietly, "What happens now?" I folded the deed of trust and returned it to my bag. "Now the legal process happens." My mother whispered, "Will she go to jail?" I looked at Vanessa. Her face crumpled, but she did not speak. "I don't decide that." "But you could ask them not to." I looked at my mother for a long moment. There she was, still searching my face for the old Rebecca. The one who gave up the keyboard. The one who accepted the mailbox lie. The one who absorbed the jokes. The one who understood because Vanessa panicked when cornered. I said no. My mother inhaled sharply. I continued, "I will tell the truth. I will cooperate. I will not minimize, soften, or reframe what she did to make this family more comfortable." My father covered his face with one hand. Vanessa whispered, "You're my sister." I looked around the house, purchased with my stolen name, then back at her. "You should have remembered that before you made me your borrower." I left at 9:12. Emily followed me to the porch. The night air was cold and smelled like wet leaves. The gas lanterns flickered on either side of the door. Behind us, through the window, Vanessa sat at the dining table beneath a chandelier she had chosen for a house that was no longer proof of courage. Emily said, "Do you want me to drive with you?" "No." "Are you okay?" I looked at the dark curve of Briar Hollow Court. "No." She nodded. That was why I loved Emily. She did not rush to replace the truth with something easier. On Monday morning, the investigation widened. The mortgage broker retained counsel. The remote notary platform produced logs. Tyler's co-working space confirmed device access. The post office box records, connected to Tyler. The down payment funds traced through 2 accounts, one of which included a short-term loan from Grant Ellis, who immediately began cooperating when he realized his money had been tied to a fraudulent mortgage. Vanessa called me 23 times in 2 days. I answered none. My mother sent messages that moved through all the stages of family pressure. At first, "Please call. Your sister is hysterical." Then, "You made your point." Then, "Families do not involve police." Then, "Your father is not sleeping." Then finally, "I should have read the letter." That one I answered. "Yes," I wrote. "You should have." She replied, "I am sorry." I stared at the words. Then, typed, "For signing it," or for getting caught in what it helped do. She did not respond for 3 hours. When she did, the answer was different. Both. That was the first honest message my mother had ever sent me about Vanessa. On December 4th, Vanessa and Tyler were served with civil claims connected to identity theft, fraud, and damages. Criminal investigation continued separately. They moved out of the house under court supervision after Mason Ridge obtained temporary possession authority, pending resolution of the fraudulent transaction. The locks were changed on December 9th at 11:30 in the morning. I did not attend. I received the update by email. Subject: Briar Hollow possession secured. I read it once. Then I closed my laptop and walked around the block. People think victory feels like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like needing fresh air, because the truth finally has keys. The public payoff came 2 months later, though not in the way people might expect. Vanessa's world had always been public. Instagram posts, brunches, home tours, family dinners, announcements. She had built an audience for her dream, and when it collapsed, she wanted privacy. That is common among people who perform success with borrowed materials. The court hearing on February 7th was not crowded, but it had enough witnesses to matter. My parents were there, Emily was there, Grant Ellis was there with his attorney. The mortgage broker's counsel was there. A representative from the title company sat behind Mason Ridge's outside counsel. Vanessa sat beside Tyler at the respondent table, wearing a black dress and no jewelry. She looked smaller. Not necessarily sorry. Smaller. I sat with Lydia. At 10:08, the judge reviewed the preliminary findings. He asked direct questions about the identity documents, the remote notarization, the false occupancy statements, the family support letter, and the funds moved after closing. Tyler's attorney tried to suggest confusion. The judge looked at him over his glasses and said, "Confusion does not usually produce a forged signature, counsel." No one laughed, but the sentence landed where it needed to. Vanessa's attorney argued that she had relied on Tyler and the broker. Then the bank's counsel produced text messages from Vanessa's phone, obtained through lawful process, including one to Tyler dated September 20th. "Rebecca never checks personal stuff fast. Once we close, we'll make payments until refinance." My mother made a sound behind me. I did not turn around. Another message. "Use my sister's info exactly. She has perfect credit and won't suspect if mail goes to the box." My father whispered, "Vanessa." This time, he sounded like a man who had reached the bottom of a well and found his own voice echoing back. Vanessa lowered her head. The judge read silently for several seconds. Then he said, "Mrs. Bennett, you understood this was not authorized." Vanessa began crying. Her attorney touched her arm. She said, "I felt desperate." The judge said, "That was not my question." The courtroom went still. Vanessa looked up. Her face was wet. "Yes," she whispered. One word. Late. Small. But finally true. The hearing did not end everything. Legal processes rarely deliver clean endings on schedule, but the court granted continued relief, protecting my identity, preserving the property for bank remedies, and barring Vanessa and Tyler from further occupancy or attempts to encumber the property. The matter continued, but the central lie had no oxygen left. Outside the courtroom, my mother approached me. She looked older than she had at Christmas. "Rebecca," she said. I waited. She clasped her purse with both hands. I believed her, because believing her let me keep being the mother I thought I was. I did not speak. She continued. If she was misunderstood, then I was compassionate. If she was lying, then I was enabling her. Her voice shook, and I enabled her. I looked at my mother. For years I had wanted her to say something like that. Now that she had, it did not undo anything, but it did put one true brick on the ground. I said yes. She nodded, crying silently. "I am sorry for making you pay for my refusal to see her clearly." That was a real apology, not complete, but real. My father stood beside her, pale and quiet. He said, "I should have protected your name." I looked at him. "Yes." He swallowed. "I don't know how to repair that." I said, "Start by not asking me to protect everyone else from the consequences." He nodded. Vanessa walked out then with her attorney. She saw us. For 1 second, she looked like the little girl under the pink canopy bed, expecting someone else to give up something so she could stop crying. Then her face changed. Maybe because my mother did not move toward her. Maybe because my father stayed beside me. Maybe because the courtroom had done what our family never could. It refused to reorganize reality around her feelings. She walked past without speaking. That hurt. And it relieved me. Both things can be true. In the months that followed, my life became quieter and more complicated. Identity theft is not over when the liar is exposed. I had to clean my credit, file reports, monitor accounts, update security, speak to investigators, answer questions from people who were paid to be skeptical, and live with the strange violation of knowing my name had been used to open a door I never touched. Mason Ridge strengthened remote notary review procedures across our mortgage platform. We added layered verification for internal employee identity use, family link anomaly detection, an enhanced post-closing review for mailing address changes. Priya Shah, the junior analyst who had escalated the file properly, received a promotion in April. I wrote the recommendation myself. I did not mention my case. I wrote, "Priya understands that procedure is only as strong as the courage to follow it when the room becomes uncomfortable." That was the truest sentence in the memo. The Briar Hollow house was eventually sold under court-approved conditions. It did not become Vanessa's dream house. It became a cautionary address in a fraud training deck after all personal details were removed. On the slide, it was called Case Study 12. That felt right. Not because it was cold. Because it was useful. Vanessa and Tyler separated that summer. Tyler faced his own proceedings connected to the fraud and unrelated investor complaints. Vanessa entered a plea process later that year. I will not describe every legal outcome because some parts are still not mine to narrate. What I will say is this: consequences arrived, and they arrived with signatures. My parents began seeing a family therapist. I did not attend at first. Then, in October, I agreed to one session. The therapist's office had beige chairs and a bowl of peppermints on the side table. My mother cried. My father spoke slowly. I listened. At one point, the therapist asked, "Rebecca, what do you want from your parents now?" I thought about it. Then I said, "I want them to stop calling my boundaries punishment." My mother closed her eyes. My father nodded. The therapist wrote something down. That became the beginning of our new language. Not healing, not forgiveness, language. Sometimes that is where repair starts. Vanessa wrote me a letter from a court-mandated financial accountability program in November. It was 6 pages long. Some of it was apology. Some of it was self-pity wearing apologies code. Some of it was honest enough to keep. She wrote, "I thought your life was easy because you did everything right. I didn't understand that doing things right was work. I thought your credit was just sitting there, like something the family could use, because you never needed help. I know how awful that sounds. I am learning that I have treated people like exits." That line stayed with me. Treated people like exits. I did not write back immediately. 2 months later, I sent one page. "Vanessa, I believe you are beginning to understand what you did. I am not ready for a relationship. I do not know when I will be. My name is not a family resource. My credit is not proof that I owe you rescue. My silence in the past was not consent. I hope you keep learning. Rebecca." I mailed it on a Thursday. Then I went to work. That may sound anticlimactic, but I have learned that many powerful endings look like a woman continuing her life without reopening the door just because someone knocked differently. Today, I still work at Mason Ridge. My office is the same. Tryon Street still shines after rain. Claire still brings tea when a file is bad. Priya now trains new analysts to trust their discomfort. Lydia still sends emails with subject lines that sound like warnings from a lighthouse. My parents visit sometimes. They ask about my work now. My father once said, "Tell me what fraud risk actually means," and then listened for 12 minutes without interrupting. My mother no longer says Vanessa panics when cornered. The first time she stopped herself, I noticed. Progress is often a sentence not spoken. Emily and I have dinner once a month. She says our family group chat is less delusional now, which may be the kindest realistic outcome any extended family can hope for. Vanessa and I are not close. Maybe we will be someday. Maybe not. Forgiveness, if it comes, will not be built on everyone pretending the dream house was just a misunderstanding. It will require Vanessa to understand that she did not steal money first. She stole trust. Money can be traced. Trust leaves a different kind of audit trail. I think about that Monday morning sometimes. The conference room. The fraud report. My name on the borrower line. The way everyone looked at me carefully, as though identity theft might shatter a person if spoken too loudly. It did not shatter me. It clarified me. My sister thought my name was a shortcut. She did not understand it was a record. Every early morning, every balanced account, every declined temptation to spend what I did not have, every year of being called boring, harsh, cold, jealous, negative, too serious, too bank. All of it was in that name. And when she used it without permission, She did not borrow my life, she exposed hers. That is what I want you to remember if you are watching this, and someone in your family treats your stability like a community fund. If they call you selfish because you protect what you built, if they say you are cold because you require honesty before rescue, if they insist family means letting them use your name, your money, your labor, your reputation, or your peace without consequence, family is not a blank check. Love is not a forged signature. Compassion is not becoming the getaway car for someone else's fraud. You are allowed to protect what has your name on it. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to let the report go where reports go. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just read the borrower line, preserved the file, and let the truth move through the proper channels. Vanessa wanted a dream house. She got a courtroom. And I got something quieter. I got my name back. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If you have ever been treated like your responsible life was something other people were entitled to spend, I hope Rebecca's story reminded you that boundaries are not cruelty, and documentation is not drama. Revenge Chronicles is for women who stay calm while the truth gathers strength, women who stop rescuing people from consequences, and women who finally protect the names they built in silence. Follow for more stories where patience becomes power and evidence speaks clearly. Now tell me in the comments, if your sister took out an $860,000 loan in your name, would you ever forgive her?